The Toronto Maple Leafs are in the thick of the playoff hunt, but what are they going to do at the trade deadline? Mike Distefano of Locked On Leafs joins us to discuss this and all things Toronto Maple Leafs next on the Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast. Gil Martin, glad to be with you, and thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen, free and available on all platforms. It's my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Leafs, Mike Distefano. And Mike, how you doing, and how you holding up during these crazy times?
Oh yeah, it's been an interesting couple of weeks, not just in hockey but around the world. Well, a couple of years really,
Yeah.
but the Maple Leafs are making things just extra confusing for people here in the Toronto area. That's for sure. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's been all right. You've been good, Gil. You've been treating yourself as well
I've
as
been
you
all
can.
right, hanging in there. And I mean, my
Yeah,
Islanders aren't looking so good right now. So,
no.
you know, the big question, I think, or the biggest question that everybody has about the Leafs, goals against. It's been a big issue, especially lately. And the GM is at least publicly saying it's not it's not the goalies, it's the defensemen. Your thoughts about that? And is it more than the defensemen? Is it both? What are we looking at?
Well, I think there's an element of truth to that where there is, both are at fault. There was a time, a stretch there a couple of weeks back where the team was just, there were so many defensive breakdowns. They're allowing way too many rush chances, 2-on-1s, odd man rushes, and those are resulting into goals. You're getting some backdoor tap ins where the guy would just get left on an island basically in an easy empty net backdoor. And so they weren't getting the defensive help. But at the same time, there's also some easy backbreaking goals that have been allowed by the opposite or by the goaltender. So in a way, like yes, the defense has not been the best as of late. Jake Muzzin is injured, one of their top four guys, and that's been a bit of an issue as well. But at the end of the day, I think that it's the goaltending. In my personal opinion, I think that the goaltending is the bigger problem. If you looked at the advanced metrics, they're allowing about 16 or 17 goals allowed above expected since December 1st. That's a high number. That's a really high number. You look at the save percentage since December 1st, they're sitting there in the bottom of the league for at 5-on-5, 31st out of 32 teams in 5-on-5 save percentage. It's not going very well for the Toronto Maple Leafs right now in the goaltending. Sometimes they've been able to outscore their problems. Sometimes they haven't. It's been a little bit of an up and down couple of months here in Toronto.
So, I mean, in the playoffs, you rely on your goaltending more. Things tend to get a little tighter. What do you expect the Maple Leafs to do at the deadline? And what are they willing to give up in order to get whatever it is they're looking to get?
Yeah, it's an interesting question there, Gil. It, it seems like every week the answer changes, to be quite honest with you. Like at first it was, all right, we need a top four defenseman to pair up with Jake Muzzin, really solidify that top four that you got there, that nucleus. And then they have the big boys who have the offensive punch there with the core four of Matthews, Marner, Tavares, and Nylander. And then Tavares and Nylander went ice cold. Tavares actually Saturday night busted out of a 14-game goalless drought, which was not fun for him to be in. But then as that line really started to go cold, it was okay. Maybe they need another top six winger to go with that line to try and increase that depth scoring. Because in the playoffs, if that top line gets shut down, you need to have that depth throughout. So maybe the top six could be the next, I guess, the next rung that they're going to try and hit on. And then more recently, it's been maybe they need to go out and get a goalie. Marc-Andre Fleury. You remember that game like last weekend against the Detroit Red Wings, that 10-7 debacle that happened? Yeah, Marc-Andre Fleury to the Leafs was trending on Twitter. And I don't think that's going to happen. I believe that these two goalies, Peter Mrazek and Jack Campbell, are the two guys that Toronto's going to have to live with and die with as they go down the stretch here into the playoffs. But on Friday, GM Kyle Dubas spoke to the media, and he said, unless they get an update on Jake Muzzin and that he will not be able to return, they have one bullet left in the chamber to make some sort of deal. They're hoping that he comes back. Best case scenario, he returns to this team before the end of the season. And if that is the case, the one bullet that they have, they most likely look like they're leaning to add to the defense. So I believe that a defender will be what they need to go out and get. And it makes sense. I mean, you isn't it kind of silly to think that they need to go out and get a player to help Nylander and Tavares help get them go? Like, those guys are paid to get going themselves. Those two combined make about $18 million. 18 million bucks. And you need to go and try and get someone to supplement them. Like, that's just silly. So I think at the end of the day, it's the blue line that needs the attention here in Toronto, and I think that's probably where they're going to make the addition. What are they willing to give up? Well, they've got their first and second round pick this year. They don't seem like they want to give up those picks and prospects. You know, Nick Robertson is a guy who's been talked about a little bit. He's got a little bit of a taste. Just scored his first NHL goal the other night, too, against Vancouver. Matt Nyes is one of their top prospects that they have. Topi Niemela, another top prospect. So they've got some guys in the cupboard, no like superstar-esque type of players, but good depth guys. And I'm not sure they want to part with any of those to go out and get a rental. It seems like if they're going to part with one of those guys, it's going to have to be for a defenseman with term. Jacob Chikrin has been a player that's been talked about a little bit. So it really all depends on what it's going to be in return.
Yeah, that's always a big factor. How important do you think it is for the Leafs to try to get home ice advantage in the first round of the playoffs? Or is it more like just get us in there and let the chips fall where they may?
Well, home ice advantage, it depends. Is that home ice advantage with the second seed or with the first seed in the division? Because it's not necessarily home ice that you want in the Atlantic. You want to get the division crown, because if you can get the crown and you avoid playing one of the Florida teams in the first round of the playoffs, I think that's got to be the goal here. So winning the division would be huge, because then that means you either take on, most likely, things could change, obviously, but most likely either the Boston Bruins or one of the crossover teams from the Metro. And the Maple Leafs would have a far better chance to get out of the first round for the first time since 2004 if they don't have to go to Florida to get it done.
Right, but then they'd probably have to face the winner of Florida Tampa Bay in the second round.
Hey, man, if they make it to the second round, I'll take it. Just get to the dang second round, man. It's been 17 years. 17 years, Gil. That's a long time. I mean,
Yeah.
you've been watching a couple of long playoff runs with the Islanders, so I'm sure it doesn't feel good. It was a while before that had happened.
Oh, yeah.
Now it feels good, right? So the Maple
Hey.
Leafs, they just need to get out of the first round. That means guarantees Florida or Tampa in round 2. So be it.
Yeah.
Just got to be out of the first round. And hey, if you're the Maple Leafs, if you finally exercise those demons, you get out of the first round, who knows where that could take you, right? For your confidence, because that put you in a little bit of a different stratosphere. And maybe then at that point, the big bad Tampa Bay Lightning or the big bad Panthers don't seem as daunting as they maybe would be in that first round.
Would be a big monkey off the franchise's back, no question
Exactly.
about that. And look, I know my Islanders went between 1993 and 2016 without winning a playoff round, so I know where you're coming from.
There you go. There you go.
In that respect. Mike, why don't you tell our listeners and our viewers where they could find you on social media and where they could find the podcast?
Yeah, you can find my personal social media at Mickey_Canuck on Twitter, and you can go and check out the podcast Twitter, Locked On Leafs, and find Locked On Leafs wherever you find your podcasts. Also now up on YouTube as well, Locked On Leafs on YouTube. So you can go find that, and myself and my new co-host Dave Morisuti and I will be keeping an eye and let you know what's going on in Leafland. It's going to be a busy couple of weeks, I would assume, up until the deadline.
No question about it. Mike Distefano, always a pleasure to have you here. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, Gil.